Glen Donly is a multifaceted man who has worn many hats, from being raised on a dairy farm, working in the cattle industry, writing a book of poetry, and spending 33 years at Dollywood. He is here to tell us a few of his most interesting stories. Please welcome Glen Donly. So welcome to my show, Glen. I am so happy to have you here this evening.
Good to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So let's start from the very beginning. As I said in the intro, you have done a lot in your life. You're very multifaceted. You've lived a long life and done a lot of things. So let's start from the very beginning. You were born in upstate New York, and you were raised on a dairy farm.
Right.
So as somebody who loves cows, I think that would have been really fun. Mm-hmm. So what did you think of it? How did you like that?
Well, the government came into the dairy business and made it so strict that we had to get out of it because it was financially wasn't viable. We went to beef cattle, which is a better way of going in the cattle business, I think. Mm-hmm. And we raised shorthorns. And Dad, being from Kansas, figured that he needed to live someplace where he didn't have to shovel snow all winter, so we moved to Tennessee, then we moved down to Alabama, and very little snow down there. And then I fell out of the nest and wound up back in Tennessee.
Wow. So I mentioned New York. So you lived in Kansas.
No, Dad was from Kansas.
Dad was from Kansas.
Yeah.
You guys moved to New York.
No, Dad was from Kansas. He met Mom during the Depression. My grandparents moved to New York.
Oh, okay.
The government was giving children of Civil War veterans a free train ride or something. I forget just how that went. But my granddad, who was from Kansas, went to New York to be a farmer there. And that's how Dad got to New York, and he met a New York lady and got married, and then I'm from New York.
Oh, okay. So your dad moved your family from upstate New York to Alabama, Tennessee area to escape the snow because he hated the snow. So how much of a culture shock was that as far as like weather, food, things like that?
Well, I'd heard of grits but never had any. Found out I didn't like grits. I went squirrel hunting one day there on the farm we were working on. And down along the creek there, I found an old chopped up moonshine still. Wow. And I thought that was just fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I'd seen Thunder Road movie and I'd heard the stories about moonshine and all this stuff, but it was just, might as well have been in a foreign land.
Yeah.
And here I am standing right where one had been found and chopped up, still had the tin cans with the axe holes in them, and I was just in hog heaven. I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I found about 3 of them along that creek there.
Oh, wow.
But
I imagine. I watch the Andy Griffith Show all the time, and on Otis is always finding people who have stills, and I'm like, man, that must have been like, that was the biggest thing back then years ago. Everybody had a still, and they sold moonshine like bootleg or whatever.
I never found an acting one, thank goodness, but it was fascinating to find those old ones.
Yeah.
And just think back of what they went through and all.
Yeah, it would have been good if you could have kept them. They would have been like antiques. You could have put them in a museum or something. So
right.
Yeah. So
a lot of them said peanut oil on them. They used peanut oil, 5-gallon tin cans of peanut oil. Wow. Apparently. And
yeah.
Revenuers have gone in and chopped big holes in them and just left them laying there.
Yeah. I guess as long as they could disable them, they didn't care if they left them or not. So I read in your bio that you sent me that you actually got a degree in livestock management, but that you found that the cattle business wasn't really your thing. So you went in a completely different direction when you moved to Tennessee, in that you started working at Dollywood. So tell me
Right.
how that happened. How'd you end up in Dollywood of all places?
Well, I got out of college, went to work on a cattle farm for a man that was rich enough he could have done anything he wanted to. He decided he wanted to be a farmer. Well, he thought if you didn't lose more than 1 cow a day to unknown causes, you were doing fine. Well, I didn't think that was fine at all. So I found out what the problem was, and we solved it. Because I went behind his back, so to speak. I didn't okay it with him. I went back behind his back and called the vet, and the vet came out and found out what the problem was, and we fixed it. Well, after that, he and I didn't see eye to eye too well, so I moved on. And after a couple more jobs, I worked in a plywood mill, grading the plywood, inspected power line poles in Virginia Beach, which was interesting. And then when I got a divorce, and Alabama wasn't big enough for my ex-wife and me, so my folks lived in Tennessee, so I came up here, and here I've been ever since. I was building a house. My dad knew of an old country store just down the road from where I live. It had been abandoned for years, but it was a big store. And he got a hold of the guy that owned it and bought it. Bought the building, not the land, just the building. And we tore that thing down, and that's what I built my house out of.
Wow.
So
fascinating.
that's how I got my house.
Yeah. So how did you end up at Dollywood? You were at Dollywood for 33 years. That's a long time to stay with one job. I find it hard to stay with one job for 33 months.
Well, I was working on my house, and I had my unemployment pay coming from Alabama, so I was living on that and building the house. And Dollywood was looking for people to work there, so I went off to the high school there in Sevierville and got hired. And stayed there for 33 years.
So what was your first job in Dollywood? Or did you do one job the whole 33 years?
Oh, no. I started out in the warehouse. And I found out right quick just how high I could stack boxes and what shelf they went on, this kind of thing. And it got old real quick. And a fellow there, can I use a personal name? Or
Yeah, you can.
A fellow named Ernie was in the leather shop. And he liked a certain radio station in Knoxville. I can't remember what it was. But he was going deer hunting one day, and he had called in previous to that and requested a song. Well, he was a 9th caller or whatever it was, and therefore he was entered in a contest to win a truck.
Wow.
Now, Ernie is my size, blonde beard, blonde hair, dressed in camo, going deer hunting. He's driving down the road, listening to his favorite radio station, and the radio says, "Ernie, you have won a truck. You've got 10 minutes and whatever to call us."
Oh, my goodness.
Well, he's 30 minutes from home. This is before cell phones. Oh, my Lord, I've got to find a phone. There's no phones out here. It's all pine trees and hay fields. So here's a home. Here's a home right here. So here's a house. He pulls in the drive, does not know those people from Adam's House Cat, knocks on the door, and he's in camo, and this lady answers the door, and he says, "Ma'am, I just won a truck on the radio, and I got to call it in. Can I use your phone?" And this lady said yes.
Wow.
So he goes in, calls on the phone, calls him up. Well, his wife is at home with a cousin of his that's visiting from Georgia. He's from Georgia. So she hears it, and she knows he can't get to a phone, so she has this cousin call up and pretend to be him so he can win the truck. Well, by the time he calls, they've already got his cousin on the phone claiming to be him. So he says, "No, I'm Ernie Carver, that guy's my cousin," and he gives them the whole spiel, and finally they believe him. So he won the truck.
Oh, gosh.
So he's driving around. It's a talk of Dollywood. Ernie won a truck, Ernie won a truck. So he comes over to the warehouse one day to pick up some stuff to carry back to the shop. And somebody said, "That's Ernie, that's the guy that won the truck right there." First time I'd ever laid eyes on him. Well, they got to be real good friends, but that's the first time I'd seen him. Well, under the pretext of walking outside and looking at his truck, I hit him up for a job in the leather shop.
Wow.
Because I heard there was an opening. He says, "What do you know about leather?" I said, "It comes off a cow." That's exactly what I want right there. I don't want somebody that's got a bunch of bad habits I'm going to have to break. He said, "Meet me over here at his boss's office, Mike, whatever." So I did. I talked to him a little bit. And he looked at me and said, "Well, if you want him, he's yours." So I got in the leather shop.
Well, good.
I stayed there several years. And then they had a knife maker quit. And Ernie knew I made knives as a hobby, and he said, you ought to try for that job right there. Why not? So I went up and talked to the boss, and next thing I know, I'm a knife maker. Did that for a couple of years. And my shoulder got to bother me, hammering on that anvil. So I went to be in the craft relief. I go around and give all the craftsmen their breaks for morning break, lunch, and then afternoon break. Did that for, I don't know, 3-4 years maybe. Well, the boss comes to me one day and says, how do you like making lye soap? Well, lye soap was one shop I never had to give a break to because there's always 2 people in there. I said, I've got a job. He said, no, you don't. We just discontinued it.
Oh, no.
I said, in that case, I like lye soap just fine. That's just the thing I want to do.
Good answer. Good answer.
So then I went to being a lye soap man. And I was sitting there, and Annie, little lady that was a soap maker, she'd come to about here on me. She's looking at me one day, she says, how do you like lye soap? I said, I've never used it. What? You've never used lye soap and you're making lye soap? Oh my goodness. So she gave me a little scrap of lye soap, so here, take this home and try it. So I did. Now, at that time I was, I don't know, in my early 50s maybe. And I had bathed pretty regular my whole life. And I took a bath in that lye soap, the shower. And I got out and I sat in my recliner. And the first impression I had was that I felt clean.
Oh, wow.
That's one thing I can describe it as. It just felt clean. I thought, well, this is odd. I've never felt this way before after a shower. And I later found out why. And I meant to bring another bar of soap. But you go in the store and you take a bar of soap, just pick one off the shelf at random. And you look at the ingredients. What's in there? You don't know what most of it is, and you can't spell any of it, let alone pronounce it.
Exactly.
That bar of soap right there's got lye, lard, and water in it.
Oh, wow.
I know what they are. I can spell each one of them. You know, so that's why there's no cleany chemical garbage to hang on to you. If we use a scent, we use the essential oil. The benefit to that is, well, lavender is good for just relaxing, and peppermint is good for circulation, and eucalyptus is like Vicks, opens up your sinuses. You will smell it in the shower. And maybe an hour or so afterwards, but then it dissipates. You don't go around smelling like it till your next shower. Before my wife died, she'd bought a bottle of apple fragrance shampoo of some kind, and it was in the shower, and I happened to see it one day, so I'll just use that up. I smelled like apples for a week, and the rest of it went in the garbage. Now that's all I use right there.
Yeah, so you brought some of your lye soap, and it's called, how pronounce that?
That's Smoky Mountain lye soap.
Oh, okay, Smoky Mountain lye soap. So I thought it said smile or smiley.
That's what you're supposed to think.
So Smoky Mountain lye soap. I don't know if you guys can see that. So you actually, you made this at Dollywood. You learned how to make it there, but you actually still make it.
I make it at home,
yeah, you and your girlfriend, and you sell it local, right? Locally.
It's handled at Pigeon Forge Soap Factory down by the old mill and Dollywood.
Oh, okay. Wow. So Dollywood still sells it for you.
Well, they don't have a soap maker.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Listen, you have forged a bond with them. It sounds like that's lasted for, well, you worked there 33 years and you retired 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, and sister's still selling your soap. But we'll put on the screen at the end of the show where people, can they order this from you if they want to, or could they order it from the store?
Federal law says my name and address has to be on it.
Oh, okay.
And it's on there. Now this bar here, that little dried up one, that is the same exact soap as this.
Okay.
Only it's been laid out and it's dried up, hard as a brick. Perfectly good soap. It'll work just like the other one. It just lacks the water.
Yeah.
The water has evaporated out of it.
Yeah.
You take that bar, if you have leg cramps at night, and put it in the bed with you, and it'll help with your leg cramps.
Wow.
Why? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to try that because I have been having some calf cramps and some cramps in my feet at night. I don't know what in
Put
the world.
that down there between your ankles and your knees and see if it doesn't help.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
You'll kick it around in the bed and it'll get smooth as a piece of old ivory. And
Yeah.
a friend of mine
I noticed there's not really a scent to it though. So yeah, I like that.
was over one day and he said, "Oh man, I had leg cramps last night." Well, here, I got something for you. So I gave him borrow that soap. He said, "Oh, that's old wives' tale. That won't work." John, if you're listening, this is you. So when they left, he walked out the door and I slipped it, borrowed to his wife. Said, "Here, put this in the bed tonight." So she did. He got up the next morning. She said, "How'd you sleep?" She said, "I slept fine. I didn't have a leg cramp all night long."
Good.
She said, "Well, it's probably that soap Glen gave me." "Oh, that had nothing to do with it. That was no wives' tale. Yeah. Well, long story short, their daughter lived up the road and she was rebuilding an old cabin she'd found. And they'd had a fire, which burnt some of the inside of the kitchen, which created a lot of smoke smell and rebuilding the dust and all. So with their baby, they just swapped houses. She lived in her daddy's house and they moved up to her house while they were rebuilding it. Well, she found the soap in the bed and didn't know what it was for and put it in the bathroom. Well, they moved back in a short period of time and his leg cramps started. He said, "I told you that soap didn't work." So his wife went to looking for it. Wasn't there. She called the daughter up. "Where's the soap we had in the bed?" Said, "Well, what was it doing in the bed? I put it back in the bathroom." Put it back in the bed and hadn't had a leg cramp since.
Oh wow, that's fascinating. Listen, I really believe in what people call the old wives' tales. I believe in them because when I was little, my grandparents raised me and my sister, and of course, you know, they were older, but my granny did all those old-fashioned things, and I remember being deathly ill one winter. I guess I had the flu, but my granny sliced onions and put them on the soles of my feet and put socks on, and that next morning those onions were brown and they were shriveled up, and I got better quick. And so I did that when I had COVID a couple of years ago. I did that then, and I'm telling you, those old tricks really work. I mean, now this generation nowadays are like even my son. He's 31, and he's like, "Mom, that's old wives' tales." I'm like, they work though. I mean, it's there was something to it because listen, years ago when I was little, people didn't go out and go to the doctor every time you got sick. You had to find something to use at home, so.
See
Yeah,
that?
I was going to ask you about that.
You know what it is?
That's a snake. That's snake.
What kind of snake?
I don't know, but I know you wore that at
It's
Dollywood.
very obvious what kind it is.
Rattlesnake?
It's a rattlesnake. What kind?
A diamondback? I don't know. I'm just guessing.
It's very obvious.
I don't know.
It's a dead one thing.
Oh, it did. That's
I
funny.
told you it was obvious. The Cherokee Indians believe if you wear rattlesnake bones, doesn't matter what kind of rattlesnake, as long as it's dead, earrings, hatband, necklace, you won't have a toothache.
Wow.
I've made 38 of these for people with toothaches, and they've all worked.
Wow.
Now, before anybody gets any wild ideas, they are protected in Tennessee. You cannot kill them.
I did not know that.
If you are personally endangered, I've been told, you can kill it. But then you've got to go let the possums eat it or bury it or throw it out in the woods, whatever. These are Alabama snakes.
Oh, okay. So,
I'm not breaking any laws. These are Alabama snakes.
guys, if you got a toothache, go to Alabama and get your snake.
Yeah.
Or West Virginia or Kentucky. Just leave the state of Tennessee.
Georgia, probably. I don't
Georgia.
know.
That's fascinating. Listen, have you ever thought about writing a book with all of these old, I call them holistic, I call it holistic ways of healing. Have you ever thought about writing a book like that?
I
About
think
that?
there's probably already books out there about that.
Hey, you know what? You can do it, though. I mean, there's people here in this area that would probably
Well,
buy
I've
it.
heard some tales. I worked with a lady when I was painting. In the wintertime, I'd paint and stuff like that at Dollywood because the leather shop wasn't open. Well, I worked with a lady one day that said, for a headache, you should walk down your road and jump over the first mud puddle you find.
Well,
Huh? For colic for a baby, you take a mole's foot,
wow.
put it in a cloth sack and hang it over the doorway.
Listen, my son, when he was a baby, He had colic. That was miserable. I would have been willing to go find a mole and chop his foot off because that's horrible. Colic for a baby's awful. I felt so bad for him, and it keeps you up 24 hours a day. So, listen, I'd
Right.
be willing to look for a mole and chop its foot off. So, but yeah, that's fascinating. So I was thinking when you were talking about how you were afloat, like to give breaks and stuff. I also done that when I was at Dollywood as well. Some days I would float out and go to different stores. That's how. So Cozy Bear was near the leather shop, and so that's where I really saw you when I would come up and work at Cozy Bear to give breaks and stuff. But it really, I've learned in life that it pays to know every position at a job you're at. I used to work in a hospital as a unit secretary, and I was the float. No other girl wanted to do it. They were like, I'm not floating. This is my desk. I'm staying here. And I was like, I want to float because I floated to the stroke unit, to medical. I floated to the cancer ward. And I got to know all of those jobs, and so I was necessary because I knew
Right,
how to do
sure,
it.
yeah.
So the more you know,
You make yourself important.
exactly, you make yourself needed. And so I didn't want to just stick to one place. So that was
Right.
very smart of you. And now, look, just on the off chance one day that somebody said, "Hey, what do you know about Lye Soap?" You said, "I have a job." And now look, years later, you're still doing this. Even after you left the park, you're still doing it. So you see how it's
Right.
been a benefit to
Right.
you to
Oh, yeah.
switch different positions like that. So, but of all the positions that you worked at Dollywood, what was your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
I guess knife making would have been first, but my shoulder played out on me. And next would be leather.
Yeah.
There's different ways of making a knife. Well, there's two basic ways. You can do stock removal, which is where you take a piece of metal and you grind it into shape. Or you can take a piece of metal and you hammer it into shape. The hammering was what was interesting. I had a lady walk up to me one day. I was working in a blacksmith shop when I was doing it at the last there. And she says, "You look like you don't have any stress at all." I said, "It's all right there on that anvil,
Yeah, I
man."
bet. Oh gosh, sounds like I need to get me an anvil. So, but yeah, for me, Dollywood, one of my favorite areas of Dollywood was Craftsman's Valley, because you had the hat shop, and you had the leather shop, you had the soap, the pork rinds, the glass works, all the things, and then the blacksmith, which was, I loved going by there and watching them work, watching them, do that. Oh, and then the glass maker up near the
Yeah,
host
Joe-
lounge.
Joe Dandy, yeah.
Yeah, so I love that part too. So for me, anything that's the craftsman like that, I love that because that's really a dying art. I was, no offense to anybody who's watching the show, but I was on Facebook the other day and I saw some, and I really don't mean this to be offensive to the young people, but I saw some young boys on there who were doing this TikTok dance stuff, and I was like, that's our next generation. And I was like, and so I'm thinking, where are all the things that we, like, is that what we're headed for?
I had a father walk up to me when I was on the leather shop porch there. He was, I don't know, in his 50s maybe. And he had a son that was maybe, I don't know, 10 years old. And he said, "Son, come here and look. He's doing something with his hands." And I just looked at the guy.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
If they can't sit there and do like this all day long, they're just bored to death.
Yeah.
But
Or play on a phone or do the TikTok stuff, which, listen, I get all this new stuff is going, but I'm an advocate of going outside, touching grass, touching the ground, doing something, learning a trade, not everybody has to go to college. Some people can go to vocational school and learn a trade,
Yeah, vocational school is great.
And make good livings. Listen, I'm telling you, electricians, welders and stuff, they make big money. So, and they didn't go to college at all. They went to a vocational school. So we have a lot of mutual friends working at Dollywood.
Right.
We have Joe Vaggett in common. Joe is actually the one that told me about you. You're a great storyteller. We have Pam Haggard in common. We have a lot of people. Sharon Rosenbaum, she was my boss for a while
Right.
when I worked there. So everyone at Dollywood has a Dolly story. Do you have a Dolly story? Did you ever interact with her, meet her? And if so, how did that go?
I wrote this book of poetry. And I told him, I said, see, every year Dolly has her picture made with the employees. And I told him, so I'm going to give Dolly a copy and book. No, you're not. I said, what do you mean, no, I'm not? She's sitting there and I'm walking off stage. We're going to hand her a copy of my book. No, you're not. You can't approach Dolly.
Yeah.
I said, watch me. I will do it. Well, then about 2 days before we had her picture made, they came out and said, you can give Dolly a book.
Oh, good.
So Dolly's sitting there and I walked up, Dolly, I wrote a book of poetry and Dollywood published it and I'd like you to have a copy. She said, well, thank you very much. What you see with Dolly is what you get. There's no smoke and mirrors, no fake nothing. It's all the people that are around her that are the problem.
Right, exactly. And that's what me and Joe talked about. And I think I talked to Haley Haggard, Pam's daughter, was on my show too. Her and her partner, they sang. And that's what we talked about. And, you know, when we would have our pictures, they would say, don't speak to her unless she speaks. But what we found is that she wanted to speak. She wanted to interact. But I'm really glad that you was able to give her this.
Yeah.
So it's called Echoes from the Holler, and it's a book of poetry. And Dollywood actually published it for you.
Right.
Is that what you said? Yeah.
One major mistake we made when I'd never published a book before, I'd never written a book before. You will notice there's no page numbers. I just assumed they put them in there when they printed, but they print what you give them and there wasn't any page numbers.
That's okay. Yeah, that's what bookmarks are for. Listen, I'd rather have a bookmark than try to remember a page number that I left off on. I could just stick a bookmark in there and, you know, pick up. So, yeah. So if you guys want a copy of this, we'll have on the screen at the end of the show how to get a copy of this. Are they still in circulation? Are you still selling them? Or
I've got a few copies at the house, and that's all. Joe wants me to get them on Amazon. I got to meet with him.
Yeah,
on the stage.
definitely do that, because that's, you know, that's where you can sell. That's where you can sell a lot.
One funny thing, they had all the craftsmen meet with Barbara Joines one day, and they had a guy coming in from Atlanta to explain what the future of the park was going to be, the plans they'd made, and all this stuff. Well, somebody came in and said, well, the plane's going to be 20 minutes late. So we're sitting there. Barbara is just about across the table from me. There's the craftsman down there on each side of me, and she's got secretaries and whatever on her side. And she looks at me and says, Glenn, you wrote a book of poetry. Maybe you could recite one for us while we're waiting. Well, I write a poem, and 2 days later, I don't even remember it. You know, it's just gone.
Yeah.
But when I wanted to start dating the lady I'm dating now, I asked her out, and she said no. So I went and wrote her a poem.
Wow.
And I wrote her a poem on a napkin at the host lounge. Went back over to the warehouse. She was working in the warehouse at the time, just before the park opened. And she came driving in with Houston. They were working together. I jumped up on the running board and I said, I wrote you a poem. You want to hear it? Oh. Houston looks at me like, what? Well, the poem was, he wanted to date the lady. She is tall and blonde and tan. Said she had a dog that farted and snored, so she didn't need a man. So I watched the dog and studied his ways and decided I would not beg. And I won the lady's heart and soul first time I hunched her leg.
Oh, no. So after that, she was yours.
She looked at me and I said, let's go get something to eat. She's all right. We've been going steady ever
Oh, well,
since.
good for you. See, listen, poetry is the way. Listen, they say that food is the way to a man's heart. So evidently, corny poetry is the way to a woman's heart.
Was with her.
So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned her because, as we said a minute ago, you're retired from Dollywood now,
Right.
but you and her still make this soap. So take me through the process. You said there's 3 ingredients, lard, lye,
Water.
and water.
Right.
So tell me how you start. Do you use those big cast iron tubs and stuff
We
like
make it
these?
just like our great-grandparents would have made it.
Oh, okay. So walk me through that process.
You can use gas, or I guess you use electricity if you wanted to, but that's just an added expense. Wood's free where I'm at. I go out, ideally I will go out the night before we're going to make it, and I'll put the water in the pot. The water comes out from a well and it's just very, very cold. Well, it has overnight to warm up. That just takes a little bit of the timing off of the heating process. Then I put in the lard. We used to get in 25-pound buckets, and now they've quit making it like that. We've got to get in 8-pound tubs, which is fine. 4-pound tubs, I'm sorry. So 2 of them in a pot. and a pound and a half of lye. One thing you never, ever want to do is two things. Is you never put lye in hot water. You put it in cold water only.
What happens if you put it in hot water?
It blows up like a cherry bomb.
Gosh, wow.
And you get lye in your eye and you're blind. That's it. They can't do anything for you. So lye goes in hot water or cold water only. The next thing you never do is you never cook it in an aluminum pot because lye dissolves aluminum.
Wow.
I had a lady, we were doing a craft show in Alabama, and I had a lady, she was very meticulous, writing down every word I said, and I said, you have to promise me you will never put lye in hot water and you will never use aluminum. She put it down. I saw her write it down and she underlined it. She came, we did that craft show 3 times a year. Now Homestead Holla. She came back the next show just in tears.
Oh, no.
She said, I tried making lye soap and it didn't work. I said, you used an aluminum pot, didn't you? Yes.
Oh, no.
She had cut down the ingredients from a full batch to a stovetop size, which you can do. And then she put it in an aluminum pot, and the lye dissolved the aluminum, and all this mess ran down through the stove. Oh, my goodness. I can just imagine the mess that made.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Bless your heart. Well, listen, that was a lesson learned the hard way because you told her. So sometimes we just got to, my mom used to say, you got to burn your own blister. Sounds
Absolutely.
like she burned her own blister and she had to fix it. So, yeah, it's really fascinating. Like I said earlier, I hope that some of our young people will discover, the arts and crafts like this and keep it going because it really is. Things like this are a dying art and it's very sad, I'm sure there's things that people did like my grandmother was born in 1924. She's passed on now, but I'm sure she saw things that I never saw, so, but I wish there's even things like sometimes I say, there's one thing that I forgot to ask my granny before she died, and that was how to season pinto beans. I can make pinto beans, but they don't taste like my granny's. And I don't know am I not using like enough fat back, or what am I not doing? But my granny made the best pinto beans, and I'm like, she's gone, and I can't ask her. So
That's it.
yeah, so
Ask them while they're here.
yeah, so listen, this has been really fascinating talking to you. You're a great storyteller. I love the story you had about your girlfriend, about Dolly and your book, and I love your book. And like I said, we'll put the graphics on the screen at the end of the show and let people know how they can get your soap. And then hopefully, whenever you get your book on Amazon, you can let me know and we can maybe go back and add it to the show. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
I've enjoyed it.
I was going to say it's nice to meet you, but I knew you from Dollywood. I just didn't really know you, but I'm glad that Joe, when I said, do you know anybody that's a good storyteller? He said, I sure do. And I'm glad he said your name and told me. And glad
Joe's a good one.
He is. He's a good person. So, yeah, but you know what? Everybody that works at Dollywood, they were all so good to me and just really kind people. So it's a special kind of people that works there. So, yeah. But thank you so much. I appreciate you being on here. So.
Well, it's good to be here.
Yeah.
I thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. Okay, you guys, thank you for joining us today, and you can join me next week for another exciting guest, hopefully another good storyteller like Glen has been, and we'll have the graphics at the end of the screen, at the end of the show on the screen, where you can order his soap if you want. And remember to always dream big, because big dreams do come true.